Welcome to Commanders Daily, everybody. I'm Bob Matthews. This is your one-stop shop for everything going on with the Burgundy and Gold. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss a day of it. Let's go ahead and continue with the stadium talk that we briefly touched on yesterday. Actually, not so briefly yesterday. Got a couple of more thoughts on it. You might remember yesterday the big news was that council has decided they're going to vote separately on the stadium proposal and also the DC budget for the year. They didn't want to do both of them together. And I still think this is mostly political grandstanding, politicians wanting to be seen doing their due diligence, which in and of itself is not a bad idea. There are still some issues I think that council at least wants a pound of flesh on, things like personal seat licenses, parking revenue, things like that, because even though the Commanders are technically putting $2.7 billion into the stadium project, they're going to be able to sell seat licenses. That's something PSLs they haven't done before, and that's going to generate hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. I don't think that'll be a sticking point per se, like something that's just going to torpedo the whole deal, but it is something I think that is going to be talked about. Now, the real issue here is that the public hearings on the stadium deal are going to take place the end of July, and then the council adjourns and goes on vacation officially for the entire month of August. Now, the Commanders have said that, a few weeks, no big deal. If it's not done by July 15th, but it is done maybe, middle of August sometimes, not a big deal. If it stretches into the fall, well, that could be a big deal. Why, you ask? Well, things like construction costs, could very well go up. We don't know what is going to happen with the tariff war. That could affect the cost of materials, and all of a sudden a $2 billion stadium or a $2.7 billion stadium might cost a whole lot more. So that could be, that's one of the things the two sides have to work out. I don't want to say it could be a sticking point because I still think this entire thing is getting done eventually, and getting done sometime before the first of the year. I still think the door is wide open on it, but it is something that you have to at least keep an eye on. Also keep an eye on if this starts to drag. There is a card that the club can play, and that's that Josh Harris, who you remember was in the Oval Office talking about this and got a little bit of flack on that. Why did he do that? Let's face it, like him or hate him, President Donald Trump is a polarizing figure. Well, one of the reasons Harris might have done it is because the land was given by the federal government to the city. If this starts to drag on too long, he can go back to the White House, maybe call in a political chip and say, hey, we're not able to get this done with the city. We want you to take the land back over and do the deal with us. Heavens knows the president, who is a real estate guy, probably would not mind having his handprint on it. And if you go back in history, the original RFK Stadium development, that was a federal project as well. We're a long way from that, but it is something just to put in the back of your mind and just kind of keep an eye on. We'll see what develops on it. Some news and notes from around the league. Trey Hendrickson still unsigned by the Cincinnati Bengals. Is that, does that mean that there's anything here that, is of interest to the Commanders? Not really, except for the fact that Hendrickson remains unsigned and says that he is not going to play on his current deal. Adam Schefter was reporting this week that they are talking, the two sides, but according to him, can't even agree on the length of the deal, much less the numbers of it. Again, why do I think this could be a problem for the Bengals and not the Commanders? Because the Commanders in the past have shown that they can get deals done. When we're talking about Terry McLaurin, the Bengals, on the other hand, do have a long and checkered history of being extraordinarily cheap and letting guys walk if they don't like what they're seeing when it comes to the numbers on their side. Again, we'll have to wait and see. There's a long way to go, but it is definitely something to keep your eye on. Frankie Luvu making a couple of comments this week that might be of interest. He was talking to some of the writers on the Commanders website, basically throwing down the hammer, I guess, on his teammates this year, saying last year was great and last year was last year, but it is in the past and it is time to turn the corner, turn the page, and start getting ready for 2025. I like that because, and it's something that needs to be said, because I think the last time that this organization, kind of experienced some success back in 2020 going into 2021, they didn't really handle the moderate amount of success they had right. I think a lot of the young players, a la Chase Young, let it go to their heads, and that's why they regressed the following year. Again, we are talking about a 7-9 team that won a really bad division. Nevertheless, it's good to see that kind of veteran leadership from a guy like Frankie Luvu saying, hey, great last year, whole new year, we got to put it aside, use it, to keep your confidence up, but we are all back to 0-0 again, so let's get ready to go. And finally, an interesting article from and some thoughts from our good friend Mark Bullock, who has a great website on Substack, writing all about the Commanders and breaking down the All-22 film on them. Mark's very, very good at what he does. Talking about Jordan Magee and how he could have an impact on this franchise and on the defense this year. One of the things he was mentioning was because Magee and why the Commanders think he could be such a key part of the defense, getting hurt early in the season, one of the things he feels that Magee can do this year is help them in their base defensive set. One of the reasons that they played so much, both cover one with a defender, with a defensive back in the box or the big nickel, was because they didn't have enough linebackers to play a base 4-3 a lot of times. He says having Magee healthy and ready to go this year, something that the Commanders coaching staff thinks he's able to do. If Jordan Magee is healthy and ready to go, he could be a big, he could go a long way in shoring up the run defense last year. A lot of times when teams showed either 12 personnel or 21 personnel, you saw the Commanders have to walk a safety down into the box to make up, to put that extra defender in there. Again, because they didn't have the luxury of a third linebacker that they could count on to come in there and play that base 4-3. See if that, is what transpires when we get into training camp. I'll be very interested to see where Jordan Magee is on the field, when they have the ones out there in defensive drills. All right, that's going to do it for us. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you again on Monday. And remember, like the wise man once always said, and he is wise, if you're out on your bike tonight, as always, do wear white.